So today, we're doing a deep dive into a really, I think, significant global trend. The different ways societies organize themselves to, well, look after their citizens.
And there's a geographic angle here that's quite interesting, isn't there?
Uh-huh.
Why is it that, when we talk about countries with really strong social safety nets, so many seem to be huddled together in one part of the world?
That's the core question, really.
Yeah.
We've got this comparative overview of global welfare systems to guide us. And our mission, if you like, is to pull out the key characteristics of these systems, the ones often held up as examples,
Right.
and really dig into why there's this geographic concentration. We wanted to give you a clearer, hopefully more digestible picture of how different places approach societal well-being.
Okay, so let's start with a pretty striking observation. If you look at lists, rankings of countries with strong welfare states, it's kind of amazing how many are in Europe, like 9 out of 10 on some initial lists.
And Canada's often the odd one out, the non-European one high up there.
Exactly. Canada pops up, but overwhelmingly European. So it really makes you ask, what's going on there? What are the factors behind that pattern?
Okay, let's try and unpack this. Maybe look at the key features that seem to define these strong European systems.
Yeah.
We can use some specific examples to make it less abstract.
Good idea. Where should we start? Healthcare.
Yeah, let's start with universal healthcare. So generally, this just means everyone gets the medical help they need, right?
Right.
Regardless of, if they can pay right then and there.
Right. But the fascinating thing is how they achieve that. It's not all the same.
Oh.
Well, take Sweden, mostly tax-funded. You might pay a small copay for some things, but the basic idea is access for all. Then you look at Denmark. They go even further. In some ways, GP visits are totally free, hospital stays, no charge.
Wow, okay.
And then, thinking outside Europe for a sec, Canada has its model too. Publicly funded, free when you use it.
So similar goal, universal access, but slightly different ways of setting it up.
Exactly, different paths to the same sort of principle.
And it's not just about fixing things when you're sick, is it? Education seems like another huge piece in these European models.
Absolutely huge. There's often this really strong belief in making education accessible, all levels.
So like from starting school right through university.
Yeah, in places like Sweden and Denmark, again, free education, not just school, but university too.
Free university.
Uh-huh. And in Denmark, they even give students government grants each month for living costs.
Seriously. That's amazing.
Norway's similar free education, plus pretty generous loans and grants. And Finland, well, they even include free meals for students as part of the deal.
Free meals too. Okay.
Now, Canada's a bit different here, right? Public school is free up to grade 12, but higher education is subsidized, not totally free.
Right. You still pay tuition, though maybe less than in some other places. That's an interesting contrast.
It is. Shows a different balance, maybe.
Another thing that often comes up is support for new parents. The parental leave policies in some European countries sound incredibly comprehensive.
Oh, definitely. That's a real hallmark. A serious commitment to supporting families.
Like how?
Well, Sweden, for example, they offer, get this, 480 days of leave per child.
480 days.
Yeah. And it's designed to be shared between both parents. And for a lot of that time, you get about 80% of your salary.
That's incredible support.
Norway gives options. 49 weeks at full pay, or 59 weeks at about 80% pay. Germany offers up to 14 months, also shareable. Even Iceland, which sometimes gets overlooked, has 12 months with pretty high salary coverage.
Well, it's a widespread thing.
It seems to be. I mean, the Netherlands might have a shorter initial paid leave period, but then there are often options for more unpaid leave, too. It points to this broader value, supporting families early on.
Okay, so healthcare, education, parental support. What about when things go wrong? Like losing a job. Unemployment benefits must be pretty important.
Crucial. Absolutely crucial safety net. And in many of these European nations, the benefits are linked to your previous income.
So it cushions the blow a bit more.
Exactly. Gives you a more substantial buffer. Sweden, you can get benefits for up to 300 days. Denmark can cover up to 90% of your previous salary if you're insured.
90%, that's very high.
It is. Norway offers support for up to 2 years. Finland, the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, they all have systems providing income-related support for quite a long time, sometimes up to 2 years, maybe longer for older workers in Germany, for instance.
And Canada has EI, employment insurance.
Right, which serves a similar function, a percentage of earnings for a set time.
Okay, one more big area. What
right.
about later in life? Retirement, pensions.
Yeah. Can't forget that. Financial security and old age. It looks like many of these countries have sort of multi-layered approaches.
Multi-layered, how so?
Well, often what they call a three-pillar system. So
Uh,
there's usually a public pension, like a state pension, then often occupational pensions tied to your job or industry, and then encouragement for private savings on top of that.
I see. Spreading the reliance, kind of.
Pretty much. You see this in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland.
Yeah.
Quite a few of them. It aims for a more secure, diversified income in retirement.
And Canada's system, with CPP, old age security, and private savings like RRSPs. That sounds somewhat similar in structure, actually.
It does echo that multi-tiered idea. Yeah, different specifics, but a similar kind of architecture.
Okay, so we've sketched out some key features: universal health care, accessible education, really strong parental leave, solid unemployment support, and these multi-pillar pensions.
Yeah.
But we still need to tackle that central question. Why Europe? Why this concentration? What's driving it?
Right, the why. This is where we need to connect the dots a bit deeper. And a really significant factor seems to be the history, the prevalence of social democratic models in many of these countries.
Social democratic models. What does that mean in practice?
Well, at its heart, it's a political ideology that really prioritizes universal access to essential services, healthcare, education, and a strong commitment to social protection for everyone.
So it's baked into the political philosophy.
You could say that. This fundamental approach directly shapes the kind of comprehensive welfare systems we've been talking about. It's a conscious choice.
A sort of foundational difference in how society sees its job, maybe, compared to other places.
Exactly. And underpinning these models, you need, well, money.
Right. How are they funded?
Mostly through taxes, and often the tax systems are progressive.
Meaning higher earners pay a bigger percentage.
That's the idea, which allows for the huge investment needed to keep these extensive programs running. There's often this strong emphasis on collective well-being, the idea that society does better when everyone's basic needs are met.
Which might contrast with places more focused on individual market outcomes.
It can, yeah. It's a different emphasis.
And are there, like, institutions that support this?
Oh, absolutely. In many of these European countries, you have historically strong labor unions. They've played a massive role in fighting for and protecting these broad welfare policies.
Okay. Union power.
And effective public institutions, too. You need the structures to actually run these complex systems well. And we should probably specifically mention the Nordic model, right?
Yes, I've heard that term.
That usually refers to countries like Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, and Iceland. They represent a particularly strong sort of cluster of these welfare-focused policies.
Okay. But it's important we don't make it sound like only Europe has social safety nets, right?
Absolutely crucial point. We need to look beyond Europe, too. Strong welfare components exist elsewhere.
Definitely. So where else should we look?
Well, take Japan. They've had universal health care for a long time and a comprehensive national pension system. Clear commitment there.
But maybe different priorities in other areas.
Perhaps. Historically, things like childcare support and parental leave weren't maybe as extensive as in some Nordic countries, though that's been changing, evolving.
Okay. What about other parts of Asia? Or maybe down...
South Korea is a really interesting case. Their system has been developing super rapidly. They've achieved universal health care. They're boosting family support child allowances, better parental leave.
Sounds like they're moving in that direction.
But maybe still building up strength in areas like unemployment support or support for the elderly compared to some others. Then you have Australia.
Right.
Exactly. Universal health care via Medicare. And strong support for seniors and people with disabilities. Free public schools. But their overall approach is often described as more targeted.
Targeted, meaning not fully universal across the board.
Focusing support on specific groups or needs rather than automatically covering everyone for everything.
Yep.
In New Zealand, they've got publicly funded healthcare and education, their universal retirement pension called superannuation, plus parental leave and income support systems.
Oh, plenty going on outside Europe. But if these countries have significant welfare elements, why don't they always show up right at the very top of those global rankings we mentioned earlier?
It often seems to come down to a couple of things. Either the actual level of generosity and certain benefits, maybe unemployment pays less, or parental leave is shorter,
Okay.
or it's that scope of universal coverage. Like we said with Australia, maybe it's more targeted in some areas rather than universal for all aspects. It's just different choices, different priorities leading to different system designs, but still important ways of supporting well-being.
Right. So bringing this deep dive towards a close then, it feels like the heavy concentration of these really strong universal-style welfare systems in Europe isn't random.
Doesn't seem like it.
It seems deeply linked to specific things: history, politics, culture,
Yeah.
especially that embrace of social democratic ideas and this focus on, collective well-being.
I think that's a fair summary. While Europe definitely stands out for that comprehensive, often universal approach, we absolutely have to remember that significant and evolving welfare systems are found all over the world.
Yeah.
They just might reflect different priorities, different historical paths, different ways of structuring how they support their citizens.
This has been really fascinating, actually, just mapping out the different approaches. It really gets you thinking about how societies choose to balance things.
It does.
So on that note, here's something maybe for you, the listener, to ponder. Thinking about all these different models we've touched on, from the Nordic approach to systems in Asia or the Pacific, which bits resonate most with your own values?
Good question.
And what do you see as the potential trade-offs, between these different ways of providing support across society and maybe ideas around individual liberty or economic approaches? Definitely something worth thinking about.
Yeah.